Hi there, Randi here, and welcome to another podcast where I am, as always, working with the impossible topics and trying to understand what's going on and come up with some solutions, however impossible these solutions might seem. And this is one of these podcasts where I'm going to raise a lot of questions. And I'm going to work with it as in discussing some of the points I have put down on paper, did a quick brainstorming. Because, to be honest, I feel that when we talk about the alien agenda, when we talk about what's going on our planet, my basic understanding is that we have barely scratched the surface of what we need to learn. So we are in this steep learning curve where we are dealing with things that where we can say, well, it would have been nice if we had 20 years to learn this, but we don't. We have 5 years or so. It's nothing more than that. This is the quick throw in the deep end, and either people can swim or they will drown trying, but at least they have tried. Let me put it that way. And I know this sounds enormously panicky and doomsday and all sorts of things that will spark to life in people that are not within this line of thinking. But as I said in my previous videos and a previous podcast, I'm a warrior and I think like a warrior. I think like a scientist. I think like a warrior, where many that have been part of the alien agenda, the researchers have been well-intended. I'm well-intended as well, but well-intended, good-hearted. I'm good-hearted too, but well-intended, good-hearted people that have looked at it from the angle of innocence, curiosity, innocence, thinking it was something out there. These aliens were only coming here from time to time. They had no greater interest in our planet. Then it shifted into perhaps they had an interest in our planet, because where else could we put in the alien abductions? And people have been talking about, well, the alien abductions were part of these people who chose that. They were part of this larger soul experiment. They had chosen to be part of these projects, which never rang true to me because of the way it was conducted, the secrecy, the playing on the subconscious material of people, the target groups of these people, naivety of these people. Quite a lot of them were avians. And from my perspective, my understanding as a warrior and a scientist, and remembering the galactic wars and whatever stuff I have been part of in this very messy sector that we are part of, for me, this, again, when we talk about these things, we can argue to explain our gut feeling, and we can say, well, this is in my gut feeling, this is how I see things, and then we can argue and come up with brilliant arguments why that is the case, but it will still be based upon a gut feeling. So I think it's more honest just to say my gut feeling is everything in these encounters and in these accounts that people have given, and the reasons why they've been asked to do this and what's been going on, and looking at it from a psychic energetic point of view, detecting the energies and the people that have been part of it, there is absolutely none of it that tells me this has been done voluntarily. I don't believe that, not in 1 minute. So that's my take on that one. And I see that as a hostile intervention protocol. I see that as going in and taking something that's not theirs to take, and then they play on the well-meaningness and the good-heartedness of the human population, because I think that kind of slipped in my earlier podcast when I talk about people that have been doing this. They are really well-meaning and well-hearted, and they have their minds in the right place, and they want to do the right thing. But one thing that they have forgotten is what they're dealing with. They have forgotten what they're actually up against. They are looking at a species that looks different. They approach these species with a diplomatic, good-hearted, well-intended demeanor. They are looking at these races from an angle of trust, of naivety, of this is probably not as bad as it seems. And whether or not that's to keep up their comfort zone, or it is to keep their fear kind of in the background of their human personality matrix, or it is because they are aligned with these races. They are already enslaved and were enslaved a long time ago and been brainwashed completely to see them as their peers and their overlords and the ones that they are supposed to collaborate with. We know that that's possible. If you shift the genetics and insert technology, you can more or less make people do whatever. They will not have that natural defense mechanism coming in telling them what these people are. They have been deprived of their ability to read complex information system as well as read the consciousness units and the purpose and function of the race in front of them, which is a natural feature of the holographic worlds. So that's one thing where you go in and enslave an entire race, is that you go in and you remove their ability to discover, detect, and investigate what is actually in front of them. Because this whole idea that we have these naive, dumb people out there in the galaxies, of course, there are different approaches. Quite a lot of the avian races, even though they are in some sort of human form, human-looking form, but their prime genetics are what we call avian, of the avian lineages, no matter whatever physical vessel they have taken on, because you don't need to have an avian vessel to be an avian. You can have an avian or part of avian lineages that goes up to, I think it's the D7 collective. I think that's that one. Then you can have many different aspects of a vessel that you can put on. You can look like a mouse if you like, but you can still have the avian genetics. So when we talk about insectoid, avian, reptoid, mammal, and humanoid genetics, they are different stages of evolution of their consciousness units, all depending on what sector they have developed within. And these are the sectors we call D1, D2, D3, up to D15, where I just follow the ideas of the Klontic sciences, which are not completely far off. We can use that model. It is, of course, a two-dimensional model. It is not a complete holographic, multidimensional model, but how can you present that to a human or a human species that are still operating within what we call a spectrum of light, frequency-based neural network that can only work in linear manners and are not ready to move into the understanding of processing information, using oppositions to develop progressive dynamics within the line of thought, from where the nodal points of information goes into a spiral and becomes a complex information system that actually has a modification or a modifying ability built into it, where information is no longer just some kind of neural network exercise or something you can verbalize and put into ideas, but actually becomes a tool, a pattern of change where you can change and transform reality dynamics. So that's what information actually is. And that's why information and understanding how to work with information is so important. And that's part of the transition science classes I have made, where I discuss this ability to shift from linear thinking into process thinking, into synergetic thinking, and into developing the 6 higher layers of how to work with information in a manner that allows you to understand that information is energy. Energy is part of our reality. And if you work with information in the right manner, you can change reality, not just because you change who and what you are and because you perceive things differently. That's what we do in this world, but it doesn't really change much, because just because people know things does not lead to changes. But in the holographic worlds, if you change what people know, you change their perception of reality. And as you change their perception of reality, you change their perception sphere. And as you change their perception sphere, you also change their influential sphere. And then reality begins to modify to what they are energetically speaking. So energy and consciousness defines the reality of the races that are part of it. That's where we understand the collectives. That's where we understand that insectoid genetics, they can still be highly advanced civilization. Most of these insectoid races are actually the androids. And they used to be something else, but they have regressed so far. The insectoid is the lowest level of consciousness potential. It's hive mind based. It's pure technology based. It is not capable of having what we call organic vessels that are communicative and interactive in manners that are what we could say more civilized, as we're just seeing on the box of our planet. They are a life form, they have a purpose, but it's food gathering, it's procreation, and it is tool administration. It is not something high complex as we would understand when we talk about the human and the humanoid races. And when we say the humanoid races, these are the D13 collective that reached the highest level of the previous universal cycles, where they work with spatial energies and technology and develop spaces with the use of technology. And then you have the human that are the D14 that have progressed into this universal cycle. We completed the previous universal cycles to an A+, and we have now become part of the D14 collective, where we are focusing on what is called life force. So we are taking consciousness and energy and transform spatial energies and organic vessels and consciousness potentials into a whole new level, which we call life force, that will lead to eternal life. And you cannot achieve that with technology. It is literally impossible. That is not in any ways or forms how you're going to do it. And you cannot take and replicate the D14 collective human genomes and add it into a D13 collective humanoid and think they will become eternal. Of course not. They will break it down because they don't have the energy system for it. They have not built the capacity to be able to hold and with or collect and gather, what's the word, progress, that was the word, sorry about that, progress, the true consciousness potentials that leads to eternal life. And that eternal life is seen in what we call the complex and advanced code systems, whereas the D13 collective, they do have code systems, but they have first and foremost in our frequency neural network perception, they have this blue golden hue to it that is the highest that they can get. And we're seeing it plants as well as part of the human biofield. So that's that level, as in what they have achieved, the highest level they have achieved are what we call the foundation, the architecture of the biofield that allows for what we could say organic vessels to exist within spaces. And they're using a lot of technology to that. So the insectoids, they do have that biofield as well, but the color of the insectoid races are typically different. That's what most people would call the etheric field, but I call the biofield because etheric is incorrect. That's old terminology from the Hindu New Age teaching systems that are over 200 years old. Let us get it updated into what it actually is. And Rupert Sheldrake came up with a morphogenetic field, which is very close to as it actually is. We have this biofield that is a kind of substance of energy that is capable of creating an organic vessel inside this space as we're dealing with, that are also part of the previous universal cycles, but we're living within constructions that are suitable for the next step of their true human evolutionary lineages. And I'm here not saying the true humanoid lineages because they need to shift into becoming true humans if they want to continue their evolution. And that's the battle between the D13 collective, because some of them want and some of them don't want to do this. So that's the wars that already broke out within their own collectives. And that D13 goes down to D11, D9, D7, D5, D3 and D1. So there you have these different groups that were under the D13 collective. And under the D14, of course, you go with the equal numbers, and then you go that lineage down where you have the different groups that belong to that. But that does not take away that the ones that were under the true humans, deviated and decided to work with the D13 collective, first as an attempt, as we talked about in the Souls of Humanity, the internal strife, as an attempt to assist and help. And later on, they just shifted side, especially after the timeline event where they got affected by the third cycle energies. And by that infusion, altered their code systems. And then they aligned themselves more and more with the D13 collective and became part of that one. And as they were there, you know how it is, or at least as when in Rome, right? So when in Rome, you act like a Roman. So that's how it is. And that's an interesting old saying, because it actually goes back to when we talk about early Christianity and we talk about the different races and Rome, the Roman Empire. When you are part of the Roman Empire, you act like a Roman citizen, whether or not you would be allowed to have Roman citizenship, which we know only were for the nobility. So this is, anyways, it's just interesting. So in Denmark, we say you follow the habits of the country you're in, or you have to leave. Either you are a part of where you are, and you become what this country represent in a diplomatic manner, or you leave, because then what's the point of being there if you stick onto your old habits and your old ways of being? And we know that is a problem and has been a problem throughout human history when different species or races have been forced to migrate, and they have been forced to leave the territory, whether it's insects or birds or any other species that then invades a new setting. Then they are taking their own habits with them, and very few of them are really assimilating. They are assimilating to the environment, but they are not assimilating to the culture. So this is when we talk about assimilation, and we talk about when in Rome features psychological features, that is typically a problem. But why do I bring that up? Not to point fingers at human behavior and comfort zone and why people are sticking to their habits and their religious practices and what have you, and have difficulty in changing. But they're actually exemplifying traits that we see within the different alien groups as well, because these people don't have the traits from strangers. So it goes far back to what we call their soul template, their architecture of what they originally are and where they come from. And I'm not pointing fingers, and you're not to take this and begin to classify other people and say, oh, because you believe in that, then you're that. That's not the point of what I'm saying here. Please bear that in mind, because all humans, even the most scientific and non-religious, non-fanatic, non-whatever person, have traits that are fueling a specific comfort zone, that are fueling specific sets of beliefs, and are fueling specific behavior because that feels good and comfortable, and where that person see him or herself as being in their prime version of what they want to be. So it all comes down to the personality matrix. And we all have these flaws, so don't point fingers. There are just some that has chosen to be in what we call more archaic types of belief systems, but that is also an issue we're dealing with when we're dealing with the different groups that are here and how they operate, and the issues of the human race as a whole. Again, remember, I'm a psychotherapist. When I've been working with people and trying to teach them and assist them and explain to them why they should change their ways and why their defense mechanisms are not really for their own highest good, but actually preventing them from taking in life in full and progress into become their highest version of what they actually could be, then people are not willing to let go of these defense mechanisms because they're become a habit. This is how they exist. This is how they see themselves. It fits their narrative and their personality matrix schemata and their emotional patterns. And it's difficult to change. So it takes education, it takes hours of talking, and it takes the reason why they should change, the what's in it for me approach. If people don't see why they should change, no matter how much information you give them, they will not change, because why should I change? Because I'm living this way, that suits for me, so why should I change? It's the others that should change. And then you have the projection, the segregation, the separatism, and then you have wars because I'm okay, it's the others. And there you have it. And that's one of the problems when we talk about looking at the alien agenda from a different perspective and what they are doing here. That's not for us to shift perspective of our own personal responsibility for our own progression journey, that we begin to focus on the others and then begin to classify them while we are not classifying ourselves. You know, why do you see the beam or the lodge of wood in the other person's eye and you're not seeing your own? You should not throw a stone when you live in a glass house, and so forth. So that's the idea. Or as the Hopi said, when you point at one finger, you have four other fingers that points, or three other fingers that points back at you. Because this is also important when we are looking into why am I then looking into the alien agenda. And I knew that from the beginning when I began this work, that I was not going to look at the alien agenda, although I knew I had insights and information that was very important. But if I didn't have the three fingers pointing back, if I didn't have created the solutions, I would not be the one going out and say, well, we're in mud to our necks here. We are in the deep end and we need to learn to swim in something that's impossible to swim in, without actually have some kind of solution that would assist and can assist people if they are working hard enough to get there. But this is the other level of it. It is harder than people think. Just seeing in normal psychology within the base program setting, within the world that everybody knows and acknowledge to be the world that they think is there, and by that actually creating it by their perception and ideas of what it is. So we are upholding it by our belief systems and our personality matrices and the different fields that we are made of. Whereas you could say that the biofield is made by the D13 collective, because that's what allows organic vessels to exist within spaces. Often artificial spaces, actually, but upheld by alien technology. Quite common, very normal. And then you have the added in emotional field and mental field that are artificial constructions that are also upheld by different forms of very complex alien technology, which those of you begin to clear emotional field and mental field when you go beyond the personality matrix and the base programs that have led you to believe that you were this or that or whatever, and you get beyond that. Past lives, memory, all subconscious material begin to clear out the 9 rings of your emotional field and get into the 5 to 7 rings of your mental field and process the information there, get rid of all the distortion, and then begin to see things as they truly are and not from your downgraded, downsized personality matrix, technology imbued perception of reality, because that's a control program. So that's the imprisonment suit, as I talked, the enslavement suit that we are in, because it's engineered to keep us stuck in a specific reality setting, which in itself is quite incredible when I think about some of the other realities where they use the same technology to enslave certain species. Most of the other races that are around here are living in suits that some of the, for instance, the insectoids are literally in insectoid bodies, or some kind of ant body, some kind of vessel that is linked up to cubes that are completely controlled from A to Z of a hive mind structure. And because they have the affinity for it already, and then you have some of the avians that are enslaved as well, and the ways that they are living in these systems under the scavengers are they're horrible scenarios, horrible realities. And then you have this one where we are enslaved, but it's so cloaked and it's so hidden that nobody really knows of it. But that's because it used to be a very advanced civilization that used to live here. So the technologies are already there, but then you have put in a lot of noise and a lot of different types of what called low state of energy features to it, so that it is capable of holding lesser developed species or special genetics, such as insectoid and avian and mammal and reptoid and what have you. So that's part of why we have so many bugs, so many species. There are, I think I read somewhere that to one human, there are 1 billion bugs or something. It's an enormous amount of bugs that we have on our planet to keep the insectoid energies present here, including avian energies and reptoid energies that allows these species to be here. Some of the colonizing races are insectoid, avian, and they do have a little amount of reptoid, but not much, because they're slave races from other systems being brought here. And they're capable of existing here because of the anchor point that are in the morphogenetic fields of insects on our planet and the morphogenetic fields of avians, which is why I claim that when we talk about the loss of biodiversity, it's not just because we have messed things up, because our system is in dire state. It is messed up. The construction is falling apart. But because of that, these races are jumping ship. And by that, they're removing their physical representation inside our reality, because they don't want to be here anymore. So they just let go of their anchor points. So not that we say, okay, then it's good, fine. And then all of these species ceases to exist. But it's part of the transition, it's part of what's happening, and we can cry over the loss of it. But if we understand what it truly were and the original purpose of it and how reality really are put together, then we might not cry to the same degree we will still look at, say, well, the shift that's then going on, what does it then shift into and what is coming instead? Because any system that has a vacuum will pull in something else. That's one of the laws as well. There are no vacancy in the original universal cycles. When a cycle is done, it is pushed into the abyss, and then something new will spring out. Something new will emerge. And in that process of decay and evaporation and the devastation cycles, there are a lot of things that will be pulled in that are also in alignment with these dynamics, and that will happen so that the adjacent sectors that are also in their devastation cycles will be accreted. They will literally, like you have a galaxy where science talks about these accretion disks as well, where you have the dust of the particles of the blown up neutron star, which then gathers together and creates a spiral, and then that eventually becomes a black hole. So that's the abyss. That is the black hole dynamics of systems that have done their cycles and are ready to go into complete demolition and cease to exist. So there you have it. So that's also part of the universal structures. And there they have this flush out mechanism, as if you are a sink full of water, you remove the cork in the middle of it, then you can flush it all out. And that's what's happening with our system right now. So that's an enormous force of regression or black hole pull-in dynamic that's happening. So what can leave will leave because they no longer have affinity with this system. So they are forced to leave, whether they will it or not. And then there are who cannot leave will then undergo the different stages of the devastation cycles unless they can muster energy, as I talked about in the completion for 3 completion videos I put on my website, the whole Academy website, where I talk about that if you're looking at an atom and you have the electron, we know the electron can gather energy and by that lift itself up to a higher level of the electron cloud or the field that actually part of it. If it can gather momentum, it can lift itself higher up. But if it can't remain, that's virtual particles, but if it can't remain on that higher quote unquote ring, which is inaccurate, but that higher level within the cloud where it has gathered momentum, then it will begin to, then it can't keep its position and it will then begin to fall back. And as it falls back, it has to burn off the energy that it has accreted or it has gained in its process to lift itself higher up. And that means it burns off this energy, and that's part of what we call emission, or the electric emission that comes from an atom as the electron folds back into its natural position, where it will then try to climb back up. And we're doing the same thing. So you're seeing everything is mirrored on the different levels of our existence, as in when we talk about the physical form, it has this, I think until you're 21, you are technically in development processes. And then from 21, it's just downhill until all of your molecules and your DNA, everything you are, has burned off their energy and their pattern from where they drew this. The morphogenetic field, the biofield is drained, it's done, it's distorted, it has black gaps in it, and then it begins to fall apart. And that's the end of the body. But of course, you can have emotional and mental field processes that are pushing the biofield to burn out quicker, that are destroying the biofield in a faster manner, all depending on how you think and how you feel. And these are what we call the psychosomatic issues that you have, which science now call epigenetics, where they have discovered that emotional features definitely play a role in how the body works, because they now understand that emotions are biochemical, electrochemical processes, and then of course are affecting the molecular state, are affecting the DNA that is also electrochemical. It all runs on electric currents, electric energy that are initiating certain processes, whether it's the human brain or the human molecules. Everything has a charge, and that charge creates a momentum, and that momentum opens up and shuts down different systems of infusion of different chemicals in the body. And that, of course, affects the human health. So there is no big science, so to speak. It took a long time to get there, but there's no big mystery in how you think and how you feel are electrochemical processes. So therefore, it of course affects the body completely, duh, for me, which is something I always knew. And by that, of course, what you eat also influence your health and how you are emotionally and mentally working, because everything is electrochemical processes. We're made of energy. So it goes without saying. And I know for some, this is completely new because you have your ideas of what a human is because you haven't studied the scientific angle to this, and thereby you're not understanding of how your body truly works. And that's one of the steps of the progressive journey, is to understand how things work, the sciences. So with that long put in, you're kind of saying, what does that have to do with a warrior? I just want to do my weapon and go out and fight the aliens. Because when we're dealing with these races, we're dealing with sciences. So that's the first one important step in this understanding, this brainstorming of accretion. If these races are here, they're here to accrete our reality field. Is this the first time in history? Nah. Absolutely not. So that's the first step, that we have to align ourselves with the ideas that we are not in this little, and this is the problem, where you can say religion in all forms of religion. It doesn't matter what religion it is. Religion on a general level, no matter what it is. I'm not a religious person. I'm a scientific person, but I'm not a science person as in general sciences. I'm a higher order science person that kind of goes with the original sciences of reality field, which of course is not what science know of. And they will probably say that my method, based upon psychic energetic viewing and understanding and complex information systems that are depending on consciousness units and ancient history and galactic wars and universal cycles, they'll just say, yeah, good for you, Randi. That's fun. Well, you're probably having fun with that one, but not until they are seeing that themselves. And some of these people that are upholding what we call general sciences, and I'm not pointing fingers or anything, we just need to ask what they are made of, what their energy composition is, and what their consciousness potentials are made of, what their purpose is, and what their function is. As I said, consciousness and energy upholds a reality. So once we begin to understand, that's one of the first very, very important things to understand. Consciousness and energy upholds a reality. It interacts with the reality it's part of. What we think and what we feel and what we see and what we perceive and what we are energetically will define the reality we are part of. We define the world by who we are. And you need to sit with that one for a very long time, because if you then begin to think about that, well, what would the invasion strategy be in a system where consciousness and energy affects the reality field that people are a part of? If you want to get in, you would modify the humans to be in alignment with the energy and consciousness from where the added on technology and added on consciousness potentials could be merged into the system. That would be the first step. Modify and adapt the humans that are there via holographic overlay in a manner so that they can get an access point. That would be the first entry point into a system. Target the ones that live there, modify their energy systems, modify the way they think and feel, modify their perception of reality, and then begin to make them focus on what they want you to focus on. That's called the law of participation. What you look at, you give energy. What you give energy, you become part of. That's a holographic law. So if they can make us do that, and if you take that concept and begin to look at the different storylines, the narratives, the information that has been given, and why certain people are targeted to become the seeders of this new information. I call them the promoters, but we can use the word seeders because their energy system is modified by the contact with the aliens they are in contact with. These people then are holographically modified by a holographic overlay that is inserted into their already existing energy system, from where they create a hybrid energy system, from where they begin to promote this information, from where they begin to affect their surroundings, and by that begins to connect to the collective fields of consciousness on our planet, will be able to seed in certain levels of information, which then becomes nodal points in the holographic network of a reality field. by that, then you can insert different forms of technologies. If people are consenting to that information and they get the symbols of that information, technology can be linked up. And once that happens, you have the alien technology that's implemented into our holographic network. And via that human that works as a carrier and a gate system, you can begin to accrete energy around that person that will then have the same, what we call black hole effect, will suck in a lot of energy from others, influence people using YouTube, Instagram, what have you, out there with a different level of information. You look at people, you say, oh wow, he or she is very charismatic, and you get drawn to keep looking at it, keep listening to what they have to say, you want more. So this is part of when you look at something, you can use resonant induction technology, where what you look at, you will get subliminal codes into your eyes, and you know what you see are connected to the neural network of the brain. The brain processes information via some sort of visual content, whether it's algorithms or it's symbols or it's features that you perceive as normal. This is a human, but a human is not a human. A human is an electrochemical complex energy system holding different levels of codes that when you look at that one, you will look at all of these codes, whether or not you know of it. Your brain will look at it as codes because your brain is not looking at that person as a person. The brain is interpreting that type of information as a person, but the brain and the eyes are not looking at that person as a person because it's only looking at that person within the spectrum of visible light. And by that are only perceiving certain limited levels of what we are perceiving. And only because we have made constructions in our neural network when we look at that weird amount of energy, we have learned that that's a human, and that's also a biological imperative. We have been conditioned to interpret that type of formation of energy as a human, whether that human has things that are different than others. And if there's something that doesn't add up in that program that we have created in our neural network of what a human is, we have a tendency to weed it out because we can't deal with it. And that's the extrasensory perception, the ESP level of when we look at things, that we look beyond of what we have been programmed to accept of what is allowed to deal with of energy and consciousness or energy formations in front of us. The same goes with the rest of reality. So the first step for us to begin to work with this is to understand that what we're dealing with here are complex information systems that can be changed to via either technology or via what we call information systems. And typically when we talk about these races, then they're using information systems, and then they link up technology to the same feature from where they can then take control of the energy pattern and then constantly put in new types of code sequences, which is what the modulation technology is all about. First, you have the holographic insert, so you can merge the fields. Then you have symbol insertions. Then you can begin to build on the symbol that will unfold like an algorithm, certain features of codes, which can then be linked up to technology. And then the cubes will begin to put in the rest of the complex information systems from where new patterns of energy and patterns of change can be instigated into the human form. We have also in the new reality program, I talk about how you can do the same with reality programs, which is another type of technology. That technology is instigated to change how people perceive about the reality and then force people to change their behavior, which will then via certain amplification factors and certain feedback loops will then go back and change the reality we are part of within new program settings that are also linked up to these program cubes. Because when you want to change something, the nuances of complexity to be able to change the original constructions of realities are enormous. Just think about an atom and the enormous amount of levels of an atom and what atoms gathered together can create of life forms and everything that's on our planet, including an entire planet. Think about the amount of complexity it takes to create a program that is upholding a planet. But that is what we are in, and that is what we are dealing with. That's the first step when we talk about these alien species that are coming in. And remember, they are living for an enormously long time, not because they are defined by time, because they live in worlds outside of time. We only have time inside the enclosure. It's part of the feature. It's part of what we call the entropy. Time is defined by entropy, technically, or is defined by what we call a vector in space that even moves, all depending on momentum, either is moving forward as in kind of gathering energy like we talked about the electron, or when it falls back, it regresses and sheds off energy, and by that creates entropy or chaos, going from a system that try to get energy to get to a higher progressive state, but because of the prohibitive technologies, are always forced to go into regression, and in that process creates entropy, and in that process creates distortion. And that is what technically is holding us from seeing that we are technically going back in time, but we're seeing that as if, for instance, if you're trying to create change in your life, you will have these 2 steps forwards and 1 step back, right? But that's because you're pushing yourself to do something, and then the entropy kicks in, and the prohibiting technologies go in and creates distortion, and then begin to think, oh, why am I even doing that? And blah, blah, blah. And then you feel all moody and all sorts of things, and then you stop doing what you're doing. That's the prohibiting technologies. That's the one that kicks in and stops you from progressing, stop you from actually achieving your goals and your strategies. And that's part of the old world order program. That's how they have kept us in stuck in a certain loop of energy for 12,000 years. So that's also part of it, is that there's nothing new with these races that are here and what they are doing with us here on our planet. So with that one, I'll begin this podcast with that one. And until next time, ponder upon what I've said here, specifically what you are defines the reality around you, because what you are energetically and consciously, whether or not you have activated your higher order potentials, are still your emotional field, your mental field, are influencing not only your biofield, but it's also influencing your surroundings, because we are all made out of the same type of energy. Our planet and us are made out of the same type of energy. So what you are influences the reality that is around you. At the same time, the constellation you are upheld by a biofield that actually connects to the original density 1 level of our planet, but it has been altered via alien technology, and your emotional field and the mental field are part of these alien technologies that keeps you enslaved and locked in, phase locked into certain perceptions of reality, phase locked into certain ways of processing electrochemical content as emotions. And it makes you process certain energetic information as part of your neural network, which is limited into the spectrum of light. You are a limited being that is in a form that is engineered to limit your perception level. So the first step of the freeing work is to learn the sciences and the understandings of what you truly are as a living being, as a human being. How does your body work? How does your emotions work? How does your mind work? What is it made of? And how do you learn to change this and transform this? How do you learn to get control of your physical form? That is step 1. If you want to go out and deal with what's really going on in this world, the first step is to get in control and empower yourself to be able to modify and transform your own energy system, your own physical form, be it via food, be it via exercise, be it via psychological work. Know who you are, know your personality matrix, know the sciences behind your physical vessel, understand that this is part of the planet that you're part of, that if you understand the dynamics of who you are, then you will begin to understand the dynamics of the planet that is out there around you. You will begin to learn yourself and reality access from where you understand that what you are influences everything around you, including other people. So the first step of responsibility is to take responsibility of the inner and outer human. Your form, your body, your mind, your emotions, and the higher order energy system. And all of that is in the progression sciences, the class material I made. As I said, I was not going to go out and give this information until I actually had a toolkit to offer to you. And then we are moving on now to the systemic energetic level where I'm saying, okay, with that toolkit, what can we do with it? What is it that is the next step for us that have begun this work of transforming who and what we are and getting ourselves under control and taking responsibility for our own progression journey, creating the highest purity level of our biofield, the highest standards of our emotional field, and the highest progression rate of our consciousness potentials. What does that mean in the system that we're in? Then we can begin to look at the political situation, the political governance, the races that are here, the governance of our reality field, and what we as a human species must develop into if we want to claim this reality field to be ours. And if we do so, what are the implications of that? What is the political situation that we are moving into the councils and are claiming that this is ours? What does it take? What do we need to learn? What are the new sciences? And what is the sector that we're actually a part of? And that's the next step of the human evolution. And that's what the Systemic Energetic Forum is all about. Thank you.